Healing is not automatic. Healing is not automatic. And I think one of the most common mistakes I have witnessed and will probably continue to witness is the belief that the departure from something, the avoidance of something, or even the denial of something is the belief that the departure that hurt us will somehow create a change on its own. Sometimes distance is absolutely necessary. Sometimes leaving is the healthiest decision available. And I'm checking audio. I always do that, even though it's usually together. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes you need to stop answering the phone. You need to resign. You need to move. You need to stop visiting certain spaces. Sometimes you need to stop explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. But the distance and healing are not the same thing. Distance can give healing somewhere to happen. It can give you silence, safety. It can give you perspective. It can stop new damage from being added to old damage. But the distance itself does not necessarily repair what happened. And I think that's where a lot of us get caught. We believe that if someone we love is irritating us, getting away from them for a while will automatically make the irritation disappear. We believe if we leave one workplace, every emotional reaction we developed in that workplace disappears with our employee badge. We believe if we stop dating someone, whatever caused us to tolerate certain things in that relationship disappears with the relationship. We believe if we move to another city, the version of us that struggled in the old city somehow gets left in a box on the curb. And sometimes a new environment really does help. But sometimes we arrive at the new destination carrying that same luggage, different airport, same suitcase. And this video is not me telling anyone that I know exactly what is in their suitcase. I don't. I can tell you what I've seen. I can tell you what I've experienced. I can tell you what I have learned from my own mistakes, my observations, therapy, reflection, reading, conversations, getting things wrong, getting things right. And sometimes I think, and sometimes thinking I had something right before life showed me I was still in orientation. But I cannot tell you the complete meaning of your life. And I do not want that job. That's your job. You have been there longer than I have. You know the oceans your vessel has traveled. I might have sailed seven seas. That does not mean I know the route of every ship. So consider this video less of a map and more of a flashlight. Take what helps you see, leave what doesn't, and learn how to hold the flashlight yourself. Distance, well, that's section one. Distance can reveal the problem without solving it. I think one of the reasons people are surprised when old patterns return is because we do not always investigate what created the problem in the first place. Let's use relationships as an example. Friendships, romantic relationships, family, work, community. Sometimes when people finally become exhausted with one another, everyone focuses on the most recent argument, but that argument may only be the smoke coming out of a house that has had electrical problems for 10 years. When you trace certain relationships all the way back to the beginning, sometimes there wasn't actually a tremendous amount of intentional compatibility. There was proximity. And that's a difference. You met because you worked together, you lived near each other, you attended the same church, you went to the same school, you enjoyed the same nightlife, you belonged to the same organization, your children knew each other, you went to the same gym, you were both always at the same third space, you had the same hobby, you lived in the same city during the same chapters of your lives. And proximity can create familiarity. Familiarity can create comfort. Comfort can create attachment, and attachment can eventually start masquerading as compatibility. Those things are not identical. You can know someone for 15 years and still not know whether the two of you are actually compatible at the stage of your lives. You can love someone deeply and still discover that the relationship structure you built together doesn't work anymore. You can have history without having alignment, and the length of a connection can sometimes inflate our perception of that connection because we've seen this person during birthdays, funerals, breakups, promotions, job losses, new apartments, new relationships, new children, new cities. We know their favorite food. We know that one story they've told 17 times. They know what happened to us in 2014. so the relationship feels deep. And sometimes it is, but sometimes the relationship contains a lot of information without containing much intimacy. There are people who faithfully exchange low effort communication every day, who may believe they have an incredibly deep friendship. Good morning. What you doing? Nothing. LOL. Look at this. That's crazy. What you doing now? And somehow we can confuse frequency with depth. Constant communication can create a very convincing three-dimensional rendering of closeness, but constant access to someone is not automatically the same thing as knowing them. And I wonder sometimes how much of our attachment to constant communication is actually about the other person, and how much of it is about what their attention allows us to temporarily feel about ourselves. Because external validation can be powerful. If I feel uncertain about my value internally, someone constantly wanting access to me can temporarily quiet that uncertainty. If I feel lonely, having 17 conversations happening at once might temporarily make that loneliness less available. If I don't particularly enjoy sitting with myself, constant stimulation from other people can make sure I rarely have to. None of this makes anyone defective. Makes you annoying as hell to me, because you will not get one reply, baby. I live in do not disturb and ain't coming off of it. It makes them human, but being human doesn't remove the responsibility of eventually becoming curious about ourselves, because otherwise we can find ourselves maintaining connections simply to maintain the feeling that we are connected, or running through connections like the St. Charles streetcar crossing Canal Street. One person gets off, another gets on, another gets off, another gets on. And because the seats are never empty for very long, we never stop to ask why the ride itself never seems to satisfy us. We are taught a lot about external living. I think modern life trains us very well for external participation. How do you look? What do people think about you? How much money do you make? Where do you work? Who are you dating? Where are you traveling? What's your follower count? What are you wearing? What kind of car are you driving? What neighborhood did you live in? Who invited you? Who didn't invite you? Who texted you? Who stopped texting you? Who watched your story? Who didn't? We get trained to watch the scoreboard, but many of us receive much less education about the person playing the game. What makes me defensive? What expectations am I carrying into this room? Why do I interpret certain kinds of correction as rejection? Why am I uncomfortable when someone doesn't need me? Why do I feel responsible for everyone's mood? Why do I keep choosing relationships where I'm required to perform for acceptance? Why am I terrified of disappointing people who disappoint me constantly? Been there before. Why am I comfortable being exhausted but uncomfortable being unavailable? Those questions require internal literacy, and internal literacy can look strange in environments where external performance is the dominant form of living. Sometimes introspection gets humorized. You think too much. You always analyze something. Why can't you just let it go? You're doing too much. Sometimes it gets ostracized. Sometimes someone asking healthy questions threatens a group where no one is supposed to ask questions. And sometimes people learn to perform emotional health instead of practicing it. They know the language, they know the cliches. Protect your peace, set boundaries, know your worth, choose yourself, cut them off. Energy doesn't lie. Some of these sayings contain real wisdom, but wisdom without practice can become decoration. It's like pouring one packet of grape Kool-Aid into a swimming pool and expecting grape soda. Technically, something grape flavored into the water, but look at the ratio. Saying know your worth 5 times a day does not automatically repair 20 years of making yourself smaller to maintain acceptance. Posting protect your peace does not automatically teach you how to communicate a boundary. Saying I don't chase anyone doesn't automatically mean you've learned how to tolerate healthy separation. Sometimes it means you learn how to disappear before someone can leave you. Those can look very similar from the outside, but internally, completely different stories. Oops. The speed bump in the empty parking lot. When we haven't developed a conscious relationship with ourselves, life can start looking like a speed bump in an empty parking lot. We just drive around everything we don't like. Difficult conversation, go around it. Uncomfortable emotion, go around it. Financial reality, go around it. Medical concern, go around it. That could be a song. Relationship issue, go around it. Feedback, go around it. Loneliness, go around it. Grief, I'm almost done. Go around it. Accountability, definitely go around that one. And sometimes avoidance works. That's the dangerous part. You can really avoid certain problems for years. You can avoid looking at your bank account, going to the doctor, repairing the relationship, thinking about the breakup, admitting that you're tired, dealing with how angry you are. You can avoid acknowledging that you're no longer happy with the life you constructed. You can avoid grief by staying busy. You can avoid loneliness by staying surrounded. You can avoid insecurity by becoming indispensable to other people. You can avoid vulnerability by becoming hyper independent. And because your life keeps moving, avoidance can look like success until you encounter something you cannot drive around: traffic, a job where you have to interact with people you don't like, a supervisor who is supposed to supervise you, your body requiring sleep no matter how ambitious you are, a physical pain you keep dismissing as age that may actually be asking for a change in movement, recovery, nutrition, medical attention, or lifestyles, the limitations of your energy, the consequences of overextending yourself socially, the reality that you cannot be emotionally available to every person at all times without eventually becoming unavailable to yourself. There are things in your life you cannot avoid. There are things you cannot control, but there are also things you can understand well enough that they stop feeling like a personal attack every time they occur. That's power, not controlling everything, understanding that everything doesn't control you. Paying the minimum payment on life. One of the metaphors I keep coming back to is the idea of paying the minimum payment on life, because you can survive doing that. You really can. You can learn the minimum necessary lesson from every experience. You can apologize just enough to stop the argument, reflect just enough to stop feeling guilty, change just enough to keep someone from leaving, save just enough money to survive this month's emergency, sleep just enough to get through tomorrow, care for your body just enough to keep moving, communicate just enough to keep the relationship technically active. Minimum payment times three. Meanwhile, stagnation is accruing interest, and eventually you're confused because you have been making payments for years and the balance seems bigger. That's because some things in life require principle. They require deeper investment, not punishment, investment, time, attention, reflection, practice, education, maybe professional help, uncomfortable conversations, changing environments, changing habits, admitting that the person you were taught to be is not the person you want to continue being. And that mission is important because you cannot intentionally adjust something you refuse to acknowledge exists. You don't have to shame yourself. You don't have to call yourself terrible. You don't have to turn every flaw into a character indictment. Sometimes you can simply say, that's something I need to do. That reaction is stronger than the situation requires. The expectation might not be realistic. I think this bothers me because it reminds me of something else. I may be projecting. I handled that badly. I don't know why this affects me so much yet. The last word matters, yet, because curiosity leaves the door open. Shame usually slams it shut. Humans bond more easily than we admit. Another thing thing I think we underestimate is how easily human bonds form. Sometimes we imagine that if something wasn't an official relationship, it shouldn't affect us deeply. If you weren't married, why are you grieving? If you weren't officially dating, why does it hurt? If that was not your biological family, why do you care? If you only worked there for 2 years, why are you still thinking about what happened? If you were only friends online, why does losing the friendship feel real? Because connection does not always ask permission from our labels. There can be miles underneath what looks like a puddle. And sometimes the conscious explanation we give ourselves for why something affected us is nowhere near the full story. That's why self-discovery can be so surprising. You start looking at your life. What built you? What frightened you? What affirmed you? Who ignored you? Who protected you? Who didn't? You learned love required, what you learned safety looked like, what you learned conflict meant, money meant, success meant, weakness meant, and eventually something shifts. Not because you memorized enough healing vocabulary, not because you learned how to perform enlightenment or you copy someone else's personality after they went to therapy, but because you actually understood something. There is a difference between understanding something intellectually and realizing it in a way that reorganizes how you see yourself. When that happens, you start discovering something interesting. Things aren't always as complicated as they seem, and things aren't always as simple as they seem. Both can be true. Therapy can help, but you have to still participate. Therapy has been beneficial in my own experience, and I think appropriate professional support can be extremely valuable for many people. But therapy is not magic either. A therapist cannot climb inside your history and rearrange everything while you sit outside waiting. And therapists are human beings. Humans can make mistakes. People can encounter therapists who are not the right fit. Some people have had negative therapeutic experiences. Those experiences should not automatically be dismissed simply because therapy helps many other people. And I will interject my own writing right there. I had a few negative therapy experiences. I had no choice but to keep going because after 2023, the magical mystery thing that I keep talking about that's still in court, so not too much on it, uh gave me the PTSD of my, like, I thought Katrina, I thought previous car accidents, I thought deaths, I thought all kinds of things was traumatic to me until pretty much losing your life and all of the extra emergency room stuff. So for me, I couldn't sit there and let those two bad experiences stop me from finding a therapist, which is a difference. A psychologist prescribes medicine and also does talk therapy, and a psychiatrist, wait, I might be mixing it up. Psychiatrist, psychologist. Yeah, psychiatrist prescribe the medicine, and a psychologist is the one that does the talk therapy. Let me double check because I know I know both of them together, but I haven't used the difference in so long. Yeah, psychologist is the one who do talk therapy, diagnose and treat emotional, mental, and behavioral challenges, though they generally do not prescribe medication. And the psychiatrist is the one that prescribes the medication. But yeah, I needed that. Otherwise, yeah, no, I would have been somewhere completely different in life right now if I didn't get in therapy. Anyways, so yeah, you can have bad experiences, but the more you know about it, the better you can navigate it. When you see that you have choices, you can choose a therapist based on ethnicity, gender, beliefs, openness to beliefs, and all types of other stuff. That way, your therapist is not a 80-year-old from Japan and you telling them about your life in the Appalachian Mountains. And it's like they're giving you empathy, but it's very limited because, yeah, that's a bad example, but you get what I'm saying. Finding appropriate help can involve discernment, research, compatibility, credentials, communication, boundaries, and sometimes trying again. But one of the saddest dynamics I have witnessed are people who genuinely want help but feel like they aren't allowed to seek it because their family doesn't believe in therapy like mine don't. Their religious community might judge it. Their friends mock people who get help. Their workplace culture treats vulnerability like weakness. Their neighborhood operates under a certain unwritten code. Their organization expects loyalty above honesty. Their family believes family business should never leave family. This is why, like, it's cute when you join hands with people like the Power Rangers and the Avengers and football teams and um the militia during the revolution and things like that. But some of these groups that y'all are a part of, the people are extremely controlling about what you can do because you are one of them. And if that's the kind of people you're around, you need to get away because you're never going to be free. You're only going to be as free as the group is free because you can only go as far as the boundaries they set for you. And as being adults and how a lot of people typically go through their worst moments alone, you being catfished if you sitting up here thinking that you in a group with people, but you go through stuff alone, or you struggling alone, you don't have money alone, when you at the bus stop or walking or however you have to get around, or if you have transportation and when your gas light on and your heart beating hoping you make it home or make it through the next red light or make it on the interstate, those groups who telling you who you could like and who you can't like and what you can't do and what you can't say, and not to mention, like, a lot of the online groups that's the loudest, all they do is battle with other groups. They're not building, rebuilding. They're not looking back and reaching back to the youth, because they finally realize that everything we're dealing with could have been prevented with better childhoods and better parenting and more. And our parents, had they had better parents and had their parents had better parents, instead of people working on stopping the cycle now while everyone has all of these different ideas and resources, they're busy beefing with other people, using recycle insults for whatever group it is, or depending on the category of the group, whatever the insult is going to be petty stuff like traitor and self-hate and all of this other dumbass stuff, which is, it sounds very childish, but then when you think about tribal thinking, people really don't be thinking for themselves. They heard that somewhere and they just repeated it. Like, especially with talking points, half of the people can't even write in a complete sentence, and you talking about a talking point. Like, stay in a child's place. Anyways, back to the healing. We're healing. No one signed anything. Everyone knows the rules. You don't tell outsiders. You don't expose what happens here. You don't embarrass the family. Fuck the family. You don't embarrass the organization. You don't embarrass the group, even when someone was harmed. I have witnessed situations where someone disclosed mistreatment and people became angrier about the disclosure than the mistreatment. Why would you tell someone that? You put our business out there. You embarrassed everyone. You should have handled that privately. And suddenly the person who experienced the harm is standing trial for acknowledging it. That can teach someone a devastating lesson. Silence keeps me connected. Speaking costs me belonging. And it's online too. And online groups, if you notice, people always attack the person who is raising the issue. They don't ever consider the wrong or the common occurrence of said issue. They may have even experienced the issue themselves, but it's just all instantly attack for people. That's why I don't understand why y'all continue to bring y'all emotions and y'all vulnerability and y'all things that y'all care about to the internet. Like, you essentially sending a bulletin board to anyone in the world who has internet access to react or comment on what you're saying, unless you have like a very, very heavily vetted private group. And as y'all see, those get infiltrated all of the time. And once someone learns that lesson deeply enough, they may stop seeking help altogether, not because they don't hurt, but because they learn that acknowledging the hurt creates another danger. Impact has its own story. Something else I had to understand is that the event and the impact of the event are two different stories. Two people can experience something similar and carry it differently. That doesn't automatically mean one is stronger. It doesn't automatically mean one is weaker. Human beings are complicated systems. Context, history, age, support, timing, existing stress, and meaning matters. What happened immediately afterward also matters. So sometimes we become insurance adjusters for our own emotions. We look at the incident and say, this wasn't bad enough for me to still feel this way. Claim denied. You shouldn't still care about that. Claim denied. Other people had it worse. You were young. Get over it. That relationship wasn't even that serious. But emotions do not always respond to our preferred accounting system. Sometimes a seemingly small event landed on top of something much older. And when you investigate with curiosity rather than judgment, you may discover connections you never noticed before. That doesn't mean every emotion should control your behavior. It means understanding where something comes from can give you more options on what to do next. That is where empathy towards yourself becomes useful, not self-pity. Empathy, not permanent victimhood, not making your history responsible for every decision you make forever. Empathy, the ability to say, okay, I understand why I learned this, and then Do I still need it? That's a powerful question. The house with the broken roof. Imagine you went through a breakup as a teenager. Maybe everyone told you it wasn't serious. You're young. You're found someone else. It's puppy love. Get over it. So you did, or at least you appeared to. But imagine that relationship created holes in the roof of your internal house. Maybe it altered your expectations around trust. Maybe it created an insecurity. Maybe it reinforced an insecurity that already existed. Maybe it changed how willing you were to become vulnerable. And instead of repairing the roof, you invested heavily in the backyard, beautiful lawn furniture, outdoor kitchen, fire pit, string lights, Christmas lights year round, a gazebo, television, speakers. The yard looks incredible. Everyone comes over and says, "Wow, look at your house." And you're so proud, as you should be. You built something. But every time it rains, water is pouring into the living room. And eventually you're furious at the weather. Why does this keep happening to me? Why does rain always ruin everything? Why does every relationship create anxiety? Why does every disagreement make me feel abandoned? Why do I always expect people to leave? Maybe the rain isn't the entire problem. Maybe the roof still needs attention. And I want to be careful here. Not everything is some hidden wound. Sometimes someone is simply irritating. Sometimes a workplace actually is poorly managed. Sometimes someone really is disrespectful. Traffic is just traffic. Your supervisor is really micromanaging you. Self awareness does not mean explaining away everything someone else does. It means understanding your contribution to your experience without automatically assigning yourself responsibility for everyone else's behavior. That's a very important distinction. Coping mechanisms can change clothes. One thing that makes patterns difficult to recognize is that they don't always look identical. Sometimes the mechanism remains the same while the object changes. Maybe someone uses relationships to escape loneliness, then they stop dating. Great. But now they work 16 hours a day. Different objects, same avoidance. Maybe someone stops shopping impulsively. Now they gamble emotionally on risky business ideas. Different activity, same needed stimulation. Maybe someone stops arguing with their family. Now they spend 8 hours online arguing with strangers, different people, same regulation strategy. And because the activity changed, we can tell ourselves the underlying issue disappeared. That's one of the clever ways we maintain plausible deniability with ourselves. I don't do that anymore. Maybe not, but what replaced it? That question is sometimes more useful. When wounds become personality. Wait, I had the top at the top. Let me see. House with the broken roof. If something painful gets disturbed repeatedly without being understood, eventually the reaction can become so familiar that we start calling it personality. I don't let anyone yell at me. Okay, maybe that's a healthy boundary, but what counts as yelling? I don't like when people stare at me. Understandable. But what happens internally when you think someone is looking at you? I can't stand people cutting me off in traffic. Most people don't particularly enjoy that, but does it ruin the next 45 minutes of your day? I don't like supervisors correcting me. Is your supervisor abusive? Or was the first correction the first one you received in 6 months? I hate being micromanaged. Maybe you are being micromanaged, or maybe someone asked for an update. The goal is not to gaslight yourself, the goal is calibration. Because if every uncomfortable experience registers as danger, correction, humiliation, rejection, abandonment, disrespect, or control, your world gets very small. Eventually, you build an emotional shell. The shell protects you. That's why it exists. But eventually, the same shell can prevent information from getting in. And then something interesting happens. You can hear the truth and fight the truth because you don't like the delivery. But if we're being especially curious, we may sometimes realize there is no delivery we would have liked because it wasn't the tone disturbing us, it was the contact. Someone touched something tender, and the conscious mind is incredible at building a legal defense afterward. They shouldn't have said it like that. They were disrespectful. They were trying to embarrass me. They think they're better than me. Maybe. Sometimes that's exactly what happened, but sometimes those explanations arrive after our body already decided protect yourself. And learning that about yourself does not make you powerless. It actually gives you more power because now the reaction isn't running the entire meeting without you. You have a seat at the table. The business of temporary relief. And this is where another part of the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Unhealed discomfort is profitable. I don't mean there is some secret room where everyone meets every Thursday and decides to keep humanity miserable. I mean, markets respond to human desire, and humans desire relief, relief from loneliness, insecurity, boredom, rejection, invisibility, anxiety, uncertainty, feeling ordinary. So naturally, entire industries develop around offering versions of relief. Buy this and feel noticed. Subscribe to this and feel connected. Join this and feel included. Wear this and signal value. Drive this and signal success. Download this and maybe someone will choose you. Pay for access to this exclusive group and perhaps you finally found your people. Purchase this transformation, identity, feeling. Some of these products and services are useful. I'm not anti commerce, definitely not anti technology. If anything, I'm the opposite. Anti luxury, anti dating apps, social media, anti buying something because you enjoy it. The question is, what job am I asking this thing to perform? Because a shoe can be a shoe, a car can be a car, an app can be an app, but a house is not a home. A vacation can be a vacation, but if I secretly assign that purchase the responsibility of repairing my self worth, that is a very expensive job description. And the marketplace will happily keep interviewing for that position because temporary relief requires renewal, another purchase, another upgrade, another match, trip, notification, compliment, person, accomplishment, another external confirmation that you matter. And if the internal wound remains untouched, the appetite can become endless. This is why performing healing can be so profitable. Healing gets packed as an aesthetic, a retreat, a product, a slogan, a lifestyle, a personality, an exclusive community. And again, some of these things can support real self growth, but buying the appearance of transformation is different from participating in transformation. Healing is participation. For me, healing has looked less glamorous than people sometimes make it appear. Sometimes it's realizing I was wrong. Sometimes it's recognizing I had an expectation that no one agreed to. Sometimes it is understanding why I reacted strongly. It is admitting that someone else's behavior really did hurt me. It is deciding not to return, deciding to have a conversation. It is learning that an explanation does not require reconciliation. It is realizing I can understand someone and still decide they don't belong in my life. It is grieving something that cannot be repaired. It is sleeping, going outside, getting professional help, learning money, learning communication, learning my body, learning how to be alone without interpreting solitude as rejection. I love being alone. It's so peaceful. It may it being alone allows me to enjoy interactions with people more, but it also keeps my standards at a level that a person who is functionally depressed, like a lot of people are, and are either just lazy or just unskilled in communication. I'm not able to keep those people around because I'm not about to waste energy to have conversations that go nowhere. Like you reach out to tell me hello. What is the point in that? Like that's very strange. That's almost never mind. Anyways, you simply adapted extremely well to an environment you no longer live in. Now the adaptation needs updating. That's different from being defective. You are allowed to update yourself. A behavior can save you at 16 and that same behavior can sabotage you at the age of 36. Hyper independence might have been useful when no one reliable was around, but later it may make receiving healthy support difficult. People pleasing might have kept conflict low in an unpredictable household, but later it may make you disappear inside relationships. Constant vigilance may have helped you navigate an environment where moods change quickly, but later you might continue in scanning safe environments for danger because your system became very good at scanning. Avoidance may have reduced pain when you had very few choices. Later, avoidance may become the thing preventing you from building choices. You don't have to hate the old version of yourself for developing those methods. That version of you was solving the problem with the tools available at the time. But gratitude toward an old survival strategy not require does not require lifelong loyalty to it. You can say thank you. You got me here, but you don't have to drive anymore. Do not outsource your inner authority. And this is probably the most important part of this video. Please don't hear me talking about awareness and decide that the solution is finding another person to tell you what everything means, including me. I don't want you outsourcing your inner authority to me. I don't want you watching one of my videos and thinking, Jay said this, therefore this must be the explanation for my life. No, investigate it, challenge it, talk to people you trust, compare it against your actual experience, read, learn, or if and I understand that there's a high number of people that don't read below a certain level. There are plenty of free adult education classes, and you can check the description because they'll have resources in there too. Take your power back, because one of the things that humans have done throughout history, not just drink water. Look at it for freezing. And it got me frozen on drinking water. That's embarrassing. Anyways, one thing humans did throughout history is when they wanted to take power over communities, they would stop them from having education, access to education. They would destroy their books. They wouldn't allow them to read. They wouldn't allow them to do certain things. And now you have people doing it for free. Like, that's it. Like, I mean, unless they snatching books out of people's hands in schools, I understand the conditions of things. I learned in a school that didn't have walls, and I chose to learn on my own. No one else pushed me to learn. The people in my household actually were annoyed when I would get invited to award ceremonies for having the highest this and the best that and all of this other stuff. Meanwhile, my classmates' parents used to always tell me, if you was my child, I'd give you $100 for every A you had and all of this other stuff. And it's like, I wish, anyways. So yeah, education is something that's important. Unfortunately, it's not prioritized, and sometimes the ignorance is inherited. Whatever the case is, you have today and tomorrow. Yesterday is where all the lessons are. Today is where the action is, and tomorrow is where the results are eventually. And sometimes disagree with me. That's healthy. The goal of useful insight should be to make you more capable of thinking, not more dependent on the person who introduced the thought. A good flashlight does not demand you keep staring at the flashlight. You use it to see the room. Eventually, you know where everything is. That is what I want for people, not followers who need me to decode every interaction, but people who become better at decoding themselves, because you know things about your life that I will never know. You know what your silence means. You know which memories still have electricity in them. You know which relationships drain you, which environments shrink you, where you're pretending, where you're approving, where you're avoiding. And even when you don't know yet, you are the person with the greatest access to the evidence. You are the primary researcher of your own life. You are the captain. I think of life like being the captain of a vessel. Advice can help, maps can help, therapists can help, mentors can help, friends can help, books can help, videos can help, experiences can help, but none of those people are standing on your exact ship. They don't know every repair you've made. They don't know every storm you survived. They don't know exactly how your vessel behaves when the wind changes. Someone who has sailed for 50 years can teach you an incredible amount. Listen, learn, ask questions, but even the greatest sailor in the world cannot completely speak for the route of every vessel. Eventually, you have to know your own ship. You need to know where the leaks are. You need to know your fuel. You need to know your limits. You need to know when something needs maintenance, when you're exhausted, when the weather is beyond your control. You need to know the difference between a storm and your fear of storms. That's awareness, not perfect control, not omniscience, but not becoming someone who never gets triggered, never cries, never gets angry, never makes mistakes, never walks around speaking exclusively in therapy terminology. Awareness is increasingly knowing what is happening inside you while life is happening around you. And the more you develop that skill, the more choices become visible. Take back your power slowly. You do not have to repair everything outright. You do not have to discover the origin story of every insecurity before breakfast. You do not have to confront every family member. You do not have to cut everyone off unless you need to. You do not have to transform yourself into some perfectly healed human being. I don't even know what that would look like. You can start smaller, notice, ask yourself better questions, pay attention to repetition, pay attention to what consistently drains you, what makes you defensive, where you abandon your own needs, what you keep buying hoping it changes how you feel about yourself. Pay attention to the people whose approval feels unusually important. Pay attention to what you avoid. Pay attention to what you keep calling your personality that may actually be a strategy you developed years ago, and approach those discoveries with compassion, because shame is loud, but it isn't always educational. It's still frozen. That's funny on the screen, because curiosity can teach you more. It's instead of what's wrong with me, try what happened here. What did I learn? Is it still true? Is this helping me now? What another response look like? What information am I missing? What part of this is mine? What part isn't? What can I control? What can I adjust to? What do I need help understanding? These questions put you back in the captain's chair. And finally, healing is not automatic. Time can help, distance, leaving, rest can help, therapy, a new environment, a conversation, a book, a friend. But none of those things automatically create transformation simply by occurring. Healing involves participation. It involves seeing yourself clearly enough that you stop treating every uncomfortable discovery like an accusation. It involves understanding that some of your behaviors were adaptations, some were mistakes, some were taught, some were copied, some protected you. Some protected you once and now cost you more than they save. And you're allowed to update. You're allowed to question what everyone around you considers normal. You're allowed to seek help even if your family never did. You're allowed to admit something that hurt even if someone else thinks it shouldn't have. You're allowed to discover that something you once called a boundary was actually fear. You're also allowed to discover that something everyone called fear was actually a boundary. This is why you have to know yourself, not because every answer lives inside you magically. It doesn't. We need information. We need people. Why did I write that? Sometimes we need people. We need community, expertise, perspective. But outside information becomes most powerful when it helps strengthen your internal capacity to evaluate your own life. The goal is not isolation. The goal is discernment. The goal is not needing anyone. The goal is knowing who, what, when, where, why, and how much. The goal is not becoming impossible to hurt, even though that's that. I mean, hey, if you end up being that, congratulations. The goal is becoming increasingly capable of knowing what to do when you're hurt. But see, do not get it twisted, because being numb can give off the what, like, the words is running. I'm sounding like, anyways, the feeling of invincibility is an illusion, and sometimes that is a side effect of being numbed. Like for me, I'm numbed, so I probably am impossible for somebody to intentionally hurt, but there are still things that probably do hurt me. I just, it's not people like baby, look, it's I have so much I could say about people, from the best of them to the worst of them and everything in between. And honestly, the more people you meet, the more you see people repeat. Like, it's not that everyone is the same, but people with certain habits look like other people with those same habits. A person who's a liar looks like another liar. A person who is a backstabbing, two-faced ass friend or family member moves just like other backstabbing, two-faced friends and family members. A ungrateful, bum ass, cum ass, dump ass dog ass hoe or man or whore or bum dude, they maneuver pretty similar, and sometimes they even frequent the same places or have the same preferences or use the same justifications for their bummetry. But the goal is becoming increasingly capable of what to do when you're hurt, because storms will still come, people will still disappoint you, you will still disappoint yourself sometimes. Relationships will change, bodies will change, money will fluctuate, cities will change, jobs will end, people will leave, people will arrive. But see, these are not things that you throw at the situation when it happens. Like if a situation is going on, just saying, oh, people will still disappoint you, you need to really investigate and make sure that that's really is what is happening, and be fine with the fact that if you may it may be something you could have did differently. But that's why shame is an issue, because if you have an excess level of shame, it is going to be extremely difficult to ever see your part in anything. It's going to always be so much easier with the us versus them mindset. And that's exactly how content creators are manipulating a lot of people online with the us versus them mindset. They make them think that you and them are in some imaginary conference room together, and on the other side of the wall is the them who banging on the wall, and y'all got to hold hands and stay together even though it's the internet and you never see these people in real life. So yeah, anyways, money will fluctuate. Life is going to continue being life. The power is in becoming familiar enough with your vessel that every wave doesn't convince you that the ship is sinking. You have already sailed waters no one fully understands. You have survived circumstances another person could study for years and still never experience exactly the way you did. So listen to advice, use resources, seek help, learn from people, learn from everyone, good and bad. Like I know sometimes certain situations make you despise the thought of a person, but dissect the actions that happen. Dissect the moments where you probably felt like you something was gonna happen and you didn't listen to it, or somebody else talked you out of it. All of those things matter. Like your life is a never-ending science project, and either you're gonna be the scientist or you're gonna be the project. You choose. So listen, I am speaking from my ship. You are standing on yours. And maybe the real work of healing is not becoming someone who never experiences rough water again. Maybe it's becoming a captain who can finally recognize the weather, understand the vessel, ask for help when needed, make repairs when necessary, change course when wisdom requires it, and still trust yourself enough to steer. That is it for this video. Thank you for everything, and have a I mean, see that be the cliche jumping out. And but thank you, and do whatever y'all want. And good night.